Sounds like we're ready. All right. Welcome to the pre-meeting for our March 1st general meeting, for lack of a better term. Are you in charge, Felix?
No.
I think
Well-
so. You know, anybody that steps up to talk is in charge.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd be happy to run through the two subs that I have on the agenda and just quickly, and then I'd like to point out one thing from Smart Fields too.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and get started with it?
So on your screen here, we have they're returning for final approval tonight.
Which one is this?
This one's Buffalo Run. 18 lots. They've come through with basically all the things that they need for final approval. Saw that it was ready. We tried last month, it didn't quite work out, but this time it is ready. So what I was planning to do is just kind of run through the civil drawings, and so just kind of at the end of my presentation, run through the conditions of approval. Pretty straightforward, pretty typical of the final approval for subdivision in this case. Was there I did include the civil drawings with your packets. Was there anything that maybe you guys had questions on, or some design or connectivity, or just general, any questions?
I do on your other, not necessarily on this one. Any questions on any of the information on Buffalo Run? We'll let them look at it for a minute.
Oh, I just noticed Buffalo Run Acres Subdivision. Yeah.
Anything catch any of you? Okay. Okay. So we can go to your Smart
Fields.
Fields.
Yeah. Hard to keep them all straight now. So yeah, in your packets, I mean, we wanted to give this applicant a chance to get those final approval letters. They were able to get those for us. Here on the screen, let me kind of show you the two ones in particular that we were looking for is this final will serve from Hooper Irrigation and the final will serve from Taylor West Weaver Water. You can see in both of those, they clearly stated availability for capacity, also that they will serve the entire phase 2 development, the 24 lots. This one might look familiar. I mean, they came in and they got preliminary and final a few months ago, but they ended up changing the phase 2 plan. The whole reason, what spurred the change was planning's request to add another stub out to the west edge. So as you can see in this drawing, they have those stubs. So we were able to get that connectivity aspect satisfied, and in doing so, they kind of switched things around and added more acreage, added a few more lots, and this is the result of that. So in this case, what they're looking for tonight is preliminary and final subdivision approval.
I've got a question on the drainage. The drainage on these well, three of these lots. 2, 3, 4 of these lots, actually. Oh, no, 5, 6. It's kind of long and narrow along the back side of those lots. My concern is accessibility county. And, you know, is there going to be an easement right away, something to facilitate in case there has to be, you know, some sort of action taken for mitigation? You know, we're talking about, yeah, 201, 05, 206, and then over here on 224, 223, and 222 as well. And 202. Yeah. There's kind of some.
That's what the his name is Andy, the engineer that drew this. That was his intention, to meet the stormwater calculations for this entire phase 2. His intention was to use those as the engineering division has already posted their comments that they would prefer that both retention basins are all just as overall better design. The final plat that will actually be recorded will have the retention basin just one large basin.
So engineering hasn't given a final on this.
Technically not, but they've got the final review.
So,
well, that's really up in the air at this point. They would have to go back and probably maybe add some area to lot. So that retention basin that's in lot 2 and 9, I would imagine they would either create another one in maybe an area where they have it, or expand that temporary retention pond to extend over to lot 206 or something. Honestly, I don't know what they would do. Options.
it may change the lot configuration.
Yeah, and if you don't feel comfortable approving it, and you want more details on that, you could table it for that information to come back, or you could approve it conditioned upon engineering and giving your approval to the Board of Commission. There's options.
And so, and then to address, oh, I thought you were stuff. And it's kind of my ending slide there, which is conditions. So conditions if see fit.
It's commissioners.
I believe it's already on. Yeah, so
Had all their will serves previously.
yes.
Anything else on that one, commissioners? So now, Mr. Burton. Thanks, Felix.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let me see if I can share my screen here. We've got a rezone on the agenda tonight, and this is one that you're already familiar with. The owner chose not to move forward with, you might remember there was a request for M2 last time in this location. So it'd be a change from A2 to C3. The reason for the proposed change is after the meeting with the planning commission last month, and after you recommended denial, the owner realized that they could put all of their equipment inside of a building. And if they did that, it would be considered a contractor's equipment storage shop. But all their equipment has to be inside the building. The C3 zone doesn't really allow for outdoor storage like the M2 does. And so if they want outdoor storage, they're going to have to get the commissioners, the county commissioners, to approve some kind of a development agreement that allows it. Our recommendation as staff is the same that it was last month with M2. So even though the request is different to C3, we're still saying the general plan is in the process and we don't want to undermine it. We don't want to make any decisions on rezones until the general plan is adopted. So our recommendation is that you recommend that the commissioners deny this until the general plan has been approved.
April 12th.
So it sounds like April, yeah, mid-April.
Is that still correct? Yeah, the approval. Well, it goes to their meeting on the 12th, I believe, if my notes are right. April 12th.
So this is the current plan. This is kind of the outdated one from 2003 that you're looking at. There was a scenario that showed this area with like a commercial node. And I guess it's convenient that you're having another work session tonight about the general plan, because if you wanted to see that node on here, you could request that. Rick, I don't think on the most recent iteration that you'll look at tonight, I don't think this area has commercial here.
From our meeting last week, from our work session last week, we extended the commercial corridor down to 5100 west on 1200 south. I don't know that it came across on 51. It did go north and south on 4700. But on 51, we didn't discuss that. To me, I'm not upside down about 5100, this close to 12th Street, being a candidate for commercial, especially since it sits in front of Pinea. And it's close to 12th Street, and the proximity for commercial going north and south on 51, my mind is just a natural fit. But at the same time, you know, the app have been warned that, you know, we really would prefer to see this after the general plan was completed. That's my 2 cents.
Well, my take on this is I don't have a problem with a commercial node over here because Piney is there. It's not going to go anywhere. Even though that's zoned agriculture, in my mind, it's more of I'll call it commercial, but I mean, they grow wholesale plants. And, you know, I just think that if the zoning's there, I just don't have a problem with a storage place there. I think. Right. It's got it on 3 sides. And on my last trip south, I drove around a little bit because I couldn't golf. It was cold down there. And that's a dangerous thing, but I could see some spots in Mesquite where they had outdoor storage, not indoor, but they have a very nice block wall. So a resident wouldn't be able to see over in there. And, you know, to me, that makes sense to do something like this. I think that we got the issue with the road there yet. I just think that actually, I think it's a good place for commercial. though, the more I think about it. So, that's my 2 bits on it. But for tonight, and I don't know whether the tabling or the denial, I think either one would work with that. Me, I kind of lean towards a table because in a sense, that's what we did up there just off of 12th Street. And so especially where it appears we're gonna get this thing done next month. I just, I'm more comfortable maybe tabling this and just wait until that shakes out. I just don't think it's in our best interest to do it now on the doorstep of it. Yeah. And so, I think either way we'll do it, and after it's done, then we can have a little, maybe a better objective look at this and go from there.
That development is right.
More residential in between 47 and 51. Well, south of the tracks, for sure. And depending on how we make the look, as Commissioner Andriotti pointed out, it can blend in. I don't know that we want to, make that a regular on the menu out there in particular area, but I think given those 2 corridors, 4700 and 51, we just kind of naturally progress towards commercial space.
Not useful to them.
Anything else on that?
One thing, I think it's a nice thing to table, if the developer's amenable to it, just because then he doesn't have to come back and pay a new fee for that.
Correct.
So,
They also, if I had to guess, I would say they'd prefer that you didn't table it, and they understand that your recommendation might actually be to deny it, but you're well within reason to table it. I think they just want to get it through so they can get a decision. But yeah, either way.
Help whatsoever.
So you see the preference is to deny something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's what their preference would be if I had to guess. They will be, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Need to cover Director Gold.
nope, just prepare for the exciting training that William's got going on. So, yep.
So in lieu of Charlie's work sessions, we get a Liam training.
Get both tonight.
Oh, that's right.
And
Yeah.
so after the training, we jump into the work session.
Okay.
That's how we have that.
I've got a question on the schedule of the general plan. I have this one that was put out. Of course, I was gone. Is these dates still good, or have they changed? Or
So we have the public hearing set for next Wednesday.
that's tonight, correct?
And then the
Okay.
10th, we have a work session
Okay.
meeting scheduled on that date. And then I believe we come back on the,
I've got the 23rd on mine. I don't know.
yeah, we do have the 23rd.
That's
Is,
the planning commission and the commission.
yep,
Right.
yeah. And then on the 29th, we have the final general plan public hearing.
Okay.
And then on the 12th is when we have, it goes to the county commission.
There's a workshop on the 11th with the county commission.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. This is still good then.
Workshop.
That will probably be just with the commission. The joint meeting will be on that. No, you don't need to be on the one on Monday. It would just be the joint one before you guys give your final recommendation on 29th. So the joint one,
The 23rd.
23rd, and then the 29th, then it would come back for the final general plan public hearing. And then the work session for the county commission only on the 11th, and then the 12th is county commission. But you could be. It's not to say you can't be. Unless the county commission, you know, yeah. It might.
Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Well, if there's something you want to discuss, we can discuss it now. Over on page 2. The well, that's okay. Instead of finding. Okay. You want the format changed to this. Okay. Mhm. We need to make note of that in the meeting. Now, we'll give it a few minutes for people to gather, and then we'll start at 5 o'clock sharp. Thanks, June. Everybody get your microphones close. Okay, looks like it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Okay. Welcome to our Western River County Commission. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Call are excused this evening. And we'll go ahead and approve the minutes with the changes that were addressed in the pre-meeting. I can't remember. Liam, do we need to do a vote on that?
No, you do not.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any comments on that? Are we good on the minutes? Okay, thank you. With the changes, of course. Okay, thank you. We'll go down to petitions, applications, and public hearings on our agenda. Administrative items. It's like we're going to start with 3.1 LVS 042621, consideration and action on preliminary and final approval of phase 2 of Smart Fields Subdivision, 24 lots located at 1740 South, 4300 West. Mr. Felix.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. What we have before you right now is a request for preliminary and final approval for residential subdivision. The location is off of 4300 West and 1400 South. What they've done is created, this is a phase 2 of the Smart Fields. Phase 1 is actually across the street from 4300 West. And the reason why they're here today requesting preliminaries and final is because there were some changes made. And I'll run through those changes momentarily. Some of the things that we looked at for this particular development was connectivity to adjacent properties. And connectivity would be provided in this circumstance via a stub road. So there's actually 2 stub roads planned to the west of this development. This is located in the A1 zone, where your minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. And that's been factored in when considering density in this particular development. Some of the things we looked at as well as staff and review agencies at the county is preliminary and final subdivision requirements, namely their ability to obtain final will serve letters from the service districts. In this case, they have Taylor West Weaver final will serve and River Irrigation final will serve. It covers the entire phase 2 of this plan. Here we have the subdivision layout. Taylor West Weaver requested that they include a signature line for them, that they have an opportunity to ensure that this meets the water district's requirements before they sign. Some of the street layouts here, you can see, oops. Zoom in a little bit there. So 1600 South Street will eventually connect. There's an opportunity for a connection the next block over to 1600 South Street. And then 1700 South would also provide a connection to future neighborhoods. You can see what they've done is they've laid out a temporary turnaround where both these roads terminate. Lot 209 will contain the temporary retention basin. There may be opportunity to expound on that potential for the retention basin and stormwater management. We have the applicant with us today, Mr. Josh Wiscombe. What I've included also is the civil drawings. These are final drawings that are currently receiving some finishing touches from the Weber County Engineering Department. And what this does indicate is you've got your stormwater outfall there on the west side. And then you also have standard 60-foot roadway section. There's some more drawings for the civil engineer drawings. This one shows the storm drain outfall into that lot 209, that temporary retention basin. So staff recommends preliminary and final approval of phase 2 based on the following conditions. That the subdivision improvement agreement shall accompany the final recorded plat. A monument improvement agreement will be completed under the direction of the county surveyor's office. And the annexation plat bringing the entire phase 2 land into Central Weber Sewer Improvement District is completed before the time of recording the subdivision plat. Any other questions? I could skip back to some of these slides. Earlier, there were some questions about these drainage easements that have been placed on the individual lots. So, the question of how these would be accessed and maintained.
Sounds like that's kind of a dynamic situation though, on the drainage.
Yeah, and I've seen it done in other circumstances where they, in order to meet those stormwater calculations, that the engineer would draw these drainage easement areas. A lot of times, the only reason why there's a couple of reasons why the engineer doesn't look favorably upon those is because a lot of times the owners don't like having that on their property. So it becomes, if it's, if the applicant is able to address some of those details, then you guys feel like it's appropriate to touch on that subject.
Commissioners?
I'd like to hear from you. Situation. Easements, and if it's possible to move them all to one location, and what that would do to the land.
Very good. So, anything for staff at the moment? Okay, and then we'll get maybe some more information from the applicant, please. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Sure. It's Joshua Wiscombe, Layton, Utah, 1685 West, 600 South. So we just had design was something similar, I think, that was approved in another subdivision close by. And so that's a lot of the reason we had these swells designed the way they are. It's just, and it's, if you look on the thing, it's just for certain lots, like I think lot 222 at this point will actually remain filled. And so it's actually not going to have any homes built on that piece or that parcel there. And then 223 and 224 will actually be part of a future date Martinis. They're actually landowners. It's kind of where those relate out the way they are. We got their approval on that. So okay with it. And then you got like lot 202, 203, 204. And these are basically just swells in the back of the property. We try to put it toward the backs of the property or sides, and allowing the homeowner to position the house the way they want to still have those retention.
Are they daisy chained together in any way, or are they just specific for those lots?
They're specific for those lots. What's that?
How big are they?
They vary and depending on the lot size. It's kind of what they were taking into consideration when they designed it for engineering.
Drainage going through the property to those swells. It's not just the water being in them, but the pathway. I
So-
prefer to see them all in one.
So what we've done is that we'll have an agreement, basically just puts that with the builder. It basically says they have to meet the requirement. They've done it in other places. We can kind of show you documentation if you need to, but
Well, it sounds like right now, the county engineers are locations. Is that correct?
that's not what I've heard. Is
Yeah.
that new?
Is it possible, I see that 209 is a pond, is it possible for that to be a permanent place, all of the smaller ponds?
I think possibility, I think if you looked at the calculations, I think that's why they spread it out the way they did. They have to be changed in order to do that. Based on the calculations of the flow coming in there,
So the
the amount of water,
the
the amount of retainage. Yeah.
temporary retention pond is just during construction. But it couldn't be during construction and then it'll become a building lot.
Correct.
But it couldn't be, I know nobody likes to get rid of a building lot, but could it be the retention pond instead of all of the smaller ones? Maybe. Instead of turning into a building. Instead of making a building pond.
I mean, I guess it could be. That's not how we design. I mean, when we sat down with the engineers, this was representation from Great Basin that we hired to do it. It was kind of their recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So if that becomes a building lot, then where does the water go?
It would just go on to future development at some point.
So
So the expansion, I think what we had talked about originally was expanding, developing for whoever's coming to expand that.
so you'd expand that and then that pond would be somewhere else?
Yeah, or an adjacent, depending on if you picked up the land next door with the Quincy's. I know we did have some talks with them. I mean, there's some interest perhaps in selling.
Sorry, I have to clarify just again. That temporary retention pond, stay a retention pond. in Other places available. Currently, calculations require that retention pond plus all of the small. ones.
Yeah.
And so that one can't become a building lot until another. And doesn't put a retention pond in that.
Right now, no, because it's Martini's land, and they're going to continue to kind of use that lot
Oh, it's farmland.
as farmland.
I think I'm more confused than I was before. So,
Sorry about that.
so this temporary retention pond, I thought was just for construction of this subdivision. But
It
then
is.
Then we've added in another equation of property that's next door for potential development. At which time, maybe a more permanent location comes into play for this retention pond. Is that clear? Am I clear on that, or is that incorrect?
The retention pond should be for temporary for construction, is what we've been told by engineering.
Construction only?
Yeah.
Then it goes away?
Yeah.
And then these swells, when that retention pond when construction's done, retention pond is gone, these swells take the place of that retention pond.
These swells continue to stay in place, yes, based on the lot size and the retention of the lot itself. So if you look at each one of them, based on the acreage, they're bigger because their lot size is bigger. Maintain their water for their lot, yes, correct.
So what happens with the,
If you looked at what you guys did in approval on phase one, it had very similar stuff as to this.
do you have phase one, Felix? You can put up.
Didn't bring it with me.
I thought that phase one showed some out near 4,300 is what I remember.
Question while we're pull this up.
Please.
Is there sewer at this location?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sure, yeah, and we can move those to back if that's a recommendation. If you'd like. Sure. I think we're just trying to lay them out. Some of those I know were laid out. I know I personally asked for 202 at one point. I mean, moved by the engineer, so it got changed. So good.
I got a question for staff. Do we have that in our ordinance? That's acceptable? Retainage?
No, nothing that would designate the exact placement of that. I think what the county likes to see things done, the county engineer likes to see things done a certain way. And so it would definitely be a recommendation from engineering to how water stormwater should be managed and how they like it designed. Directly from engineering.
I have an opinion on it. As soon as the last house is done, or as soon as the final inspection's done on these houses, the first thing they're gonna do is fill that hole in. And there's nobody to police it. So where does that leave that subdivision for retention?
You know, that is a possibility. So some of the things that, some of the fail safes that we have in place is that if someone is looking to build a structure, looking for a permit, we do have an opportunity to review their site plan. But as far as just bringing in dirt, I'd say, yeah, someone could probably do that.
Well, we don't have, I can't see anybody going out when somebody fills that in. It's kind of like that floodplain dike that they built along the West Weaver River. It's supposed to remain a dike, and 3/4 of the people have taken that out and say, "You've gone along there." So same type of situation here. Nobody's there to police it.
Options here are to deny, to table this, or to condition it. That's, can't make that motion, so all I can do is put the opportunities out there.
Sarah has to make the motions tonight.
I kind of, I agree with Commissioner McCormick. You know, those, that all looks really good in an engineering drawing, but yeah, there's a great opportunity that they're going to get filled in. And then when they're needed, they won't be there. You can condition your motion to ask that.
That's why I asked staff if we had that in our ordinances, if they could do it. Potentially, if it's in our ordinance. Either way, we gotta change that at some point in time if it is in our ordinance.
Well, I think our fail-safe is that engineering makes these recommendations. Their recommendation that we
Let me take a look at if they've mentioned anything. These are the latest review comments. Item number 7 looks like he's kind of looking for more information.
Yeah.
I have a concern too, because I did a subdivision like this where the overloading required all the slopes to slop to the back. And it was like a minimum 16-inch drop. So the water could flow down to a storm drain that was in the middle.
flooded their
As soon as
house.
the first person put in their basketball court, that was gone. And there was nobody to police it.
Well, the engineering review, I mean.
I'm fine if they're gonna review it.
Yeah, but they don't,
Let's
they
just
don't,
pass it and let engineering do it.
well, yeah, and I agree. They don't make mention of the smaller roles that are in plat. But they do make mention of this temporary pond. So, yeah,
Meant for the existing.
I kind of think that's an engineering thing.
Any more questions for staff or for the applicant? Then I'll ask for a motion and we can have more discussion after a motion. Unless we need to have more discussion now.
Just until those conditions have been satisfied on this one, I don't know if, and oftentimes you do a time certain date, but in this situation where you're wanting to have engineering's concerns addressed is what I'm gathering. I think that should be, yeah.
Director, do we need to table it or just pass it subject to?
You could do either or.
engineering?
You could, if you felt comfortable, you can condition it based upon
I feel comfortable with
satisfied.
the staff.
Or if you don't feel comfortable, you could table it until those things are addressed and then have that brought back before you. You could do it either one.
What numbers? I'm with you.
I make a motion to table item. Let's see, 3.1 on our agenda, LVSO 42621. Consideration and action on preliminary and final approval of phase 2 of Smart Fields Subdivision located at 1740 South, 4300 West until until engineering is satisfied with the drainage requirements,
Retention.
drainage and retention.
Have a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Have a motion in a second. Commissioner Wicker.
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti,
No,
chair votes no as well. Thank you. Motion for tabling has carried 3-2. Thank you. Okay. Agenda. Consideration and action of final approval for Buffalo Run Subdivision, 18 lots located at 2400 South, 100 West. Felix.
Okay. So, oh, shoot. This isn't- So this is a request for final subdivision approval of Buffalo Run Subdivision, another connectivity incentivized development. This is the reason why we call this connectivity incentivized is because the design of these roadways provides for flow of traffic and also for connection to adjacent developments and also to land that has the potential to be developed. In this case, you have, if you look at this subdivision plat, you've got neighboring properties that abut this. So you've got Confluent and then you have Reno Jesco. You also have the half width 33 feet dedication on the east side, and that runs north and south. Connection to Olson Estates, so they're on the south. There's this development proposal shows a retention basin completely within lot 18. This larger lot. It's owned by Mr. Jim Marzial, who's the developer for this land. And slide. Here, this is helpful in displaying what they plan to do with their utilities. These are color coded, which is helpful. You see the green is the sewer line that needs to run a considerable distance north and then westward on 2200 South Street. You also have those utilities that would stub to adjacent lands with the roadway. These are the final civil drawings. There are some temporary turnaround easements on these where you have the stubs. This one might be helpful showing that. Temporary turnaround easements on that west and the north side. That area in the light blue is the retention basin. That will be basically part of the common area. I've added a condition of approval in here because you have, considering that you have common area, they'll have to form an HOA to manage that. So I'll go to the staff's recommendations page now. Zone. The request is for final approval. Staff recommends final approval based on the conditions stated in the report. I've brought those conditions over. That very last one mentions the HOA documents. And with that, that kind of concludes what I had. If there's any questions, I'd be definitely happy to answer.
On the east end of the property, Felix, where there's potential for a road. And I think we've been told previously that the owner on the east is not interested in development. But how is that road, when it does eventually go through, going to be on the quarter section line, or is that going to be offset? I know that in the previous subdivision and even some of the initial information we got on this development, there was some question about that.
As far as where that half width aligns, I could definitely bring up
Grab that parcel number.
And then as far as how it lines up with the survey system. So you can kind of see here, section 29. That, yeah, it's basically an 8th section line. Runs straight down. You can see 4500 west.
Well, there's a subdivision just to the south of this where either a road or a partial road has been put in, and I believe it's offset off of the line. And I know that, that's something that we were trying to get better at as we progress.
So you're talking about 2400 south? Or are you talking about
Correct.
4500 west?
At the top of 2500, at the top, at the east side of 2400 on 4500 west.
I see. Yeah, it looks like that would be like an 8th section line, which is perfectly reasonable to have another block, creation of a block along that.
So at this subdivision to the south, there is some asphalt installed there. But my question is it going to is it going to line up? Because the way it is right now, that I believe at the top of that at 4500 is offset to the west. It's not exactly on the 8th section line there.
We might be able to gather that information from the,
I don't think we can ask him to correct it.
No, I don't know exactly. That's why I'm wondering going
Kind of up in
forward.
the air.
Yeah.
We can't pull that on against these people.
No, and I'm not trying to. I just was wondering how exactly it's going to be in the future.
We would have more dedication when the Jusco develops. It looks like, and I may have just said that name wrong, but it looks like it lines up with 4500 west that's been dedicated to the south.
And it looks like they've left a partial right of way there, or how it lines up with that line with where the first light, with where the lots line up.
Yeah.
It's like there's probably, I don't know how many feet there, I can't tell, 30 feet or 33 feet.
It looks like they're doing a 22-foot road dedication.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see. Okay. All right. Okay.
Might be, because I can't read the small print here. The irrigation ditch says it's gonna be backfilled. Has that ditch been abandoned, or is it piped, or is it anything?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I'm just wondering if it's used in the property, like it's the adjacent property where it looks like there's fields there.
I believe that is an existing facility, but I can't tell you if it has been replaced by pipe. It was a concrete lined open ditch. But I'm not sure if it's been replaced with pipe now.
Does it dead end?
No, the ditch, no, it goes all the way over across 2200 and continues.
Well, then they can't show that.
Right. Yeah. Unless they have to be piped.
Yeah.
Yeah. which it may already be.
Did you look at that, Felix?
I mean, the civil drawings might indicate something, some activity that's planned to release pipe that. Maybe you could point me to the exact location with Chair Andreotti to. which you-
Are you talking about the one down here in the middle? Oh, I think that one's been abandoned. I think
Abandoned?
everything's up here on the east end now. I'm sorry. And that's the one I thought you were talking about was on the east end.
No.
I believe the one that goes through the middle has been
Right, I
abandoned.
was gonna say, it's,
Yeah,
with the right of way, it does away with. it.
yeah, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Actually, it looks like it will be. They've lined up the way that they should.
Yeah, they've lined up what they can if we're putting the road. If we want them to do like a half width, then the rest of the road would be on the adjacent property owner to finish. And we have previously approached that owner to say, hey, let's sit down and talk about this road. And they didn't want to sit down and talk about it. So
And we're talking about to the south.
we were talking, well,
The east.
the east, yeah.
Okay, right. Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay. That. Ask for a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend final approval of the Buffalo Run Subdivision LVB 110921. The proposal creates 18 residential lots. The recommendation is based on the following conditions. All subdivision improvements are complete and escrowed before the subdivision plat is recorded. The developer enter into a monument improvement agreement with the county surveyor's office. An annexation plat bringing land into the central Weaver Sewer Improvement District is approved by the county surveyor's office. The annexation plat shall be recorded before the subdivision plat is recorded. Signature block for Taylor West Weaver Water District to be is added to the dedication plat. All Hooper irrigation conditions of approval are satisfied. The developer shall enter into a deferral agreement for curb gutter and sidewalk for improvement on 4700 West. The recommendations based on the following that conforms to the subdivision code of Western Weaver general plan. The proposed subdivision complies with the applicable county codes, and the subdivision conforms to zoning and subdivision ordinances. Oh, yes. And HOA documents for the retention basin, excuse me, are created and recorded with the final plat.
Have a motion.
I'll second all that.
Have a motion in a second.
Would it be possible for the applicant to address the HOA question?
Do we have an issue with that, Liam?
She can address it if you would like to open it up to her. It's your call.
Yes.
Start 64. The owner and developer, they have signed an agreement to put a fence up and to maintain that. So we still need to make it right with the estate.
By owner, who you talking about?
James Marzial. And he has signed that agreement. And he wants to do that.
They would need to enter into an agreement that would be acceptable to the legal department to satisfy those conditions.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
What
that's
if they move?
why we would want it subject to whoever's owning that has to maintain that. But typically, it's been an HOA that maintains those type of things. They'd have to figure out how to work that out.
If it was tied, if he did sell, because he has a home right there that owns that, if he did sell that and that was kind of that, because he will fence it, so it will be fenced, but that's part of the condition.
We'd have to look at that. Yeah, that's a different situation.
Yeah. I think that the traditional HOA is the best way to handle this, but going forward, if this is something that we that this is new, this is kind of new information to the whole process. So with that, you'd either have to condition the motion or go ahead.
Maybe you could condition it based upon the HOA or an approved legal agreement through our legal department approving the ownership and maintenance of the detention basin.
Denial or it's a table.
Yeah, until that's addressed.
Okay.
No, this is the first week even knew about engagement. It was you that discussed it like you to sign, whatever facts.
So I guess the question is, would you prefer that we table this? Would you prefer to deny and then come back? Would you?
Or add a HOA.
Yeah, or would you add, yeah, or add the HOA?
I really would like. That, that.
I'm fine.
I want everyone to get. And I am just as representative. Last time he was in snow.
Well, commissioners, so Liam, what do we have to do with our previous motion and second?
Was the motion actually seconded?
Yeah,
Then we can just put on the record that the previous motion is withdrawn and we're going to state a new motion.
You got that, June? Thank you. Okay. All right. So any more questions or concerns for the applicant? Applicant's representative?
Can I ask?
Sure.
So typically you have the developer, he is the HOA until X amount of lots are sold. And then once X amount of lots are sold in the HOA, it typically says that basically you need to create a presidency or, and then they are the ones who enforce that. Yeah, typically, no, typically that's the HOA that takes care of that.
Well, no, it isn't impossible to do that in a contract. The difficult part is enforcing that on that individual person. That's what becomes very difficult. But yeah, we can definitely state that. And in the agreement, it's easy to work out. It's just a matter of who's going to enforce it.
Well, and in the agreement, it should be that that is transferred to the title or the deed of that property. That task goes along with that property so that there is absolutely no question about the validity of it.
It's only so
Doesn't
good.
matter. It puts the responsibility back on the person that has the title for that property. And that cannot be denied.
Well, I know that I'm not willing to add an HOA, but we can take it to.
I'll second your
Howard.
motion again. If you go with the same motion.
With that, no, let's finish the discussion first. So is there any more questions for legal staff, the applicant, or? All right, so now, thank you very much. Now I'll ask for a motion.
Actually, I like the motion the way it was because the problem I have with a legal agreement is the gentleman who's gonna sign it, take care of it. It's not gonna live forever. And I'm kind of torn because if it's passed with an HOA, as long as this person lives and they take care of the business, it's all good. People would know there's an HOA there for when the person taking care of it either sells, moves, or dies. And so when that happens, I don't know whether the enforcement of that is any better for either one, but one of the things I believe we need to do is do a much better job enforcing these things. Because if we're not enforcing them, then why we put them in there? So
I have a comment too.
Sure.
And I think your HOA, in this case where it's restricted to one item, isn't that restrictive either for your purchasers, but it gives them an answer in the future if push comes to shove.
So that's a good question.
We're just, if you wanted to use the same motion, it needs to be restated. Just restate, call for a motion, restate the motion.
Okay, now here's my question. If the applicant does not want to, stand by what we've put on the agenda, then what we can vote on the original motion, but if it's not what the applicant wants, I don't want to take the opportunity away for them to do something different. So I guess that's kind of the conundrum here.
And to give them the option to come up with something different, you could table it and have them come back with something else that you could consider at a later date.
Right. Would that be acceptable? With the conditions as we've been presented tonight? It doesn't look real promising. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now I'll ask for a motion. I'm just the chair.
are we doing the HOA? That's my question.
That's what I thought the discussion was.
All right, we'll give it another go. Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend final approval of the Buffalo Run Subdivision, LVB 110921. A proposal to create 18 residential lots. The recommendation is based on the following conditions. All subdivision improvements are complete or escrowed for before the subdivision plat is recorded. The developer enter into a monument improvement agreement with the county surveyor's office. An annexation plat bringing land into the Central Weaver Sewer Improvement District is approved by the county surveyor's office. The annexation plat shall be recorded before the subdivision plat is recorded. The signature block for Taylor West Weaver Water District is added to the dedication plat. All Hooper irrigation conditions of approval are satisfied. The developer shall enter into a deferral agreement for curb gutter sidewalk for improvement on 4700. An HOA document for the retention basin are included and recorded with the final plat.
The foundings.
Oh, the findings, excuse me. Guys are wearing me out. tonight. Thank you. The recommendation is based on the following findings. The proposed subdivision conforms to the Western Weaver County General Plan. The proposed subdivision complies with the applicable county codes, and the subdivision conforms to zoning and subdivision ordinances.
Thank you. Okay, have a
Aye.
motion. I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Have a motion in a second. Commissioner Wickern,
Aye.
Commissioner Briotti,
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Now, Director Grover, before we move on to the public hearing, I realize that we have our, good heavens, our rules of order to approve. It wasn't listed on as an agenda item. Is that on the agenda or?
I think it was at the very beginning. Yeah, it was.
Rules. Okay, so can we go back to that now?
You can.
Since your chair missed that. All right, commissioners. So I think we all have a copy of the rules of order for the Planning Commission. And if I remember our discussion correctly from last week, nothing has changed. Is that correct, Director Grover? On that item, do we need to vote on that as well?
That one you should probably vote on it.
So I'll open it up for discussion, commissioners. Any discussion on the rules of order for the Planning Commission?
I have.
June says it was all good.
The voice of reason. Yes, all right. So with that, I'll ask for a motion for approval of the Weber County Planning Commission rules of order for current year.
I'll make a motion to approve the rules of order, for Weaver County Planning Commission.
Thank you. Motion. Have a second.
Second.
Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to 4, legislative item. Rezone from A2 to C. Mr. Burton.
Hi, Commissioners. You have recently looked at this property. There was a rezone last month for a request. Actually, it was in December, not last month, several months ago. There was a request to the planning commission to rezone the same property to M2 manufacturing. And the intent behind that was that zone allows for this company that's interested in this property. It allows them to store their outdoor equipment and their things like pipe and vehicles. For, if you look at my staff report, I explain some of the things that they want to be able to use it for. The reason for the change to C3 is there was a work session where the owner spoke to the county commissioners and figured maybe commercial might be a better route instead of manufacturing. So it hasn't officially gone to the county commission for a hearing for adoption as a full-on rezone with an ordinance or anything yet. So the request was to come back to you to get your thoughts on C3. There was a work session. That's what I'm remembering was last month. A work session with you last month. The property, just for the record, is at 1941 South 5100 West in West Weber. The current zoning is A2. The proposed zoning is C3. C3 would not allow for outdoor storage. That's not written into the ordinance. It actually is not allowed in the C3 zone. So if the owner wanted outdoor storage, they would have to seek that from the county commission, either in the form of an ordinance amendment or some type of a development agreement that goes through the legislative process. The C3 does allow for a contractor equipment shop, a contractor shop, and everything has to be conducted within closed doors. It has to be all in an enclosed building, I should say. So they would have to enclose that all in a building with no outdoor storage. You'd be looking at the same site plan that was originally provided with the request to M2. I will say if the planning commission or if the county commissioners feel that they do want this to be commercial, we as staff are going to require that there is some, a better, an actual site plan and a professional landscaping plan that's submitted, so that we can make sure that it fits in well to this surrounding area, because we know that there's going to be several homes to the east, and we want it to fit in well. We want it to look really nice. As far as water and sewer goes, the plan would be to connect to Central Weber Sewer and to use Taylor West Weber water for culinary water. When we look at the general plan, the current general plan from 2003, it shows this area as remaining agricultural. As you know, we're getting close to hopefully finalizing the new future land use map and the general plan, the future general plan. Since it hasn't been finalized yet, and since the current general plan does not show this as anything but agricultural, our recommendation is that you deny and that you recommend that the county commission deny this as well until we can get the general plan adopted so that we know exactly what it's going to say here for this area. And there is a work session after this, and if that is something that the planning commission wants to see, they want commercial here, I would recommend that during that work session that you bring that up and discuss that. Yeah, that's my presentation. The owner is here. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioners. Questions for staff?
I don't have questions. Before we bring the owner up, I do have a request so that the director explain what options we have here so that he knows what we're dealing with.
So on this one, you could look at approving the rezone without the general plan. Waiting for that, you could approve a general plan amendment this evening if you chose to. I would probably not recommend that. I would probably recommend that you look at either denying this and forwarding on a motion, and you would be denying it based upon you don't feel that it complies with the current general plan, and then you would go through that process. you could look at tabling it and waiting for the rezone in the general plan, not the rezone, but the general plan to be amended to give an option for that. Those are your main options that you'd be looking at.
And if we do table it, he doesn't have to pay another fee.
That is correct. Commissioners? Either one, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Randy Roplato, 3954 West, 1400 South in West Weaver. Y'all kind of know me. I've been in here enough. One of you's got a time card for me, I'm sure. Anyway, it's at this point, you pretty well know what we're trying to do, so it'd be just questions.
So Mr. Roboletto, I don't think we can approve this at this point, so close to the general plan amendment. It is something we can look at as we're looking at the new general plan. Would you prefer a denial tonight so it goes forward to the county commission? It'd be best to table until after the general plan is complete.
Well, my understanding is somehow it could go to the work session, forward to the work session and keep working on this until April. That's when the general plan comes out, right? So my understanding was we could keep moving forward with this and pending the general plan.
The only way it would move forward is if you gave a positive or a negative recommendation to this. If you gave a negative recommendation to it, it would go to a work session on the county commission agenda. And they would have time to set a date for that meeting. If you table it, it would come back before you. You'd want to table it to a time certain date. And that time certain date would probably be after the general plan is approved. And then
I guess it's the question of those two options, would you?
Well, I can't speak for the potential buyers. He's here to represent them, but this went on for several months, so I don't know if it's exactly fair to them, but I don't want to speak for them. I'd like you to
Ask him. And I guess there's also the caveat that even the general plan still may not allow for this. I mean, it's something we definitely want to look into, but there is a possibility that it still may not be able to fit in that area with the new general plan.
You realize the nursery's around three sides. They're not going nowhere, so they're a commercial operation that's basically covered under agriculture. So
It's true, and it's something to consider. There's also a full side of residential consider as well. So it's a difficult conundrum.
It is. So we can hear from, the other half of the applicant perspective and see, but the options to kind of keep it moving forward without, we have two options. One is to deny, one is to table. And it's pass or deny, but it looks like it would probably not pass. So tabling it would keep it going forward. It just wouldn't put it on a work session for the commission itself, correct, Director?
Have you talked to the commission? Would you rather deal with them than us? Would you rather deal with them than us? No, I'm serious.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I'm not,
It is.
I'm not, I just.
well, they kind of
Were
want
they
your,
giving you
your
like-
guys' recommendation. They're, but for the most part, seem to be favorable. But they do want to see the general plan, but they thought we could kind of move forth with it. Depending on what you guys thought. So they actually asked us to bring it back to you guys after our work session with them.
And I kind of think they'd want to see the plan before they move either direction anyway. Personally, I think he's safer with the table and then come in after that, the new plans out. But that's up to you.
And for the timeline on approval of the general plan was April 12th of April. So that's
5 weeks.
5 weeks away.
I guess we'll go with what you guys think's the safest options to keep it alive.
Okay. All right. Now, I failed to open a public meeting on this, but so far we've heard from staff and the applicant. So do we need to open and close a public hearing?
Yes, you would.
Okay. All right. So I will do that. Thanks, Mr. Opalato. I'll need a motion to open a public meeting, please. Public hearing, excuse me.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, we're in public hearing. So anyone from the public have anything on this item that they would like to share? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now out of public hearing. So with that said, unless we need more discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
Right, I'll make a motion to table item 4.1 in our agenda, ZMA 2021-05. Public hearing for consideration of a requested rezone from A2 to C3 located approximately 19 from South 5100 West Ogden.
Okay, and we probably should add a time to that.
Oh, tabled until after the general. Do I need a specific after the general plan?
That date could possibly be extended out.
Until after the general plan for Western Weber is completed.
Motion. Ask for a second.
Second.
A motion and a second. Commissioner McCormick,
Aye.
Commissioner Clontz, Commissioner Andriotti,
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item is tabled until after the general plan is established and approved by the county commission. Thank you very much. Okay. I'll open up the floor for the public to speak on items that were not on the agenda. Wow, we actually had some public and no one wants to speak. Darn it. We get tired of listening to ourselves talk. Okay. Next item is remarks from the planning commissioners. Commissioners, any comments?
No, I can't let it go by. Another article. This one was in the Desert News, comes in the newspaper, which
What's
I
that?
didn't want it, but I got it. Now I read it. And they're talking about what they call middle housing. Flash dateline. Most areas don't allow middle housing. You know, small lots, we had a thing last month where they wanted 4-acre lots. Some people figure that maybe they don't fit well. And, but I guess where I'm at here is, and this document here talks about it is people want their kids to live close by, family close by. And when they also cited a development in Tremont that really, got the ire of the public up. But I guess one of the problems that I see here with this is small lots are on the horizon. There's no way that we're going to get by without having them. And there's going to be other kinds of housing that's going to come with that. And I guess where I'm at today is, you know, we can come up with 1,000 reasons not to do something, but I believe that this is such a critical item for our families and our communities that we need to start embracing how we can do some of this stuff. Because I can give my 3 kids each a lot and they still can't build a house. And, you know, there's something wrong with that. And so I guess my point with this is no one in this county would be living where they are today without a farmer selling their property. That's pretty well the fact of life. And as time goes on, in the 50s it was okay, the 60s it was okay, the 70s it was okay. But now we're at a point where housing is so expensive. The state of Utah is now a place where people want to come live, play, and work. And so that's changed the horizon of what we should be doing in the planning. And our planning needs to really embrace everybody's needs. You know, you go to a big city and you see where those people are. Well, you know what? Those people in this neighborhood where we are people like Wayne Andreotti that gets 80 years old and wants to have a small place somewhere. I could afford a big place, but I want a small place. So when we talk about those people, it's us and it's our children. People wanting to start, empty nesters. And to me, that's where we need to start putting our attention is where we want to have these places, and it's not next to the railroad tracks. It's not next to the freeway. It's not next to the busiest intersection in Weber County. It's in the neighborhoods. And so with that, I'm not going to take up any more time. I know everybody's probably hoping that news won't have anything for me. But I would just like us to really consider that, because this general plan, I think, as stated last month, is 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. Well, if you could have looked at this place here in 1950 and seen what it is today, you never would have believed it. And it's the same now. The problem we've got is it all has to hook together and work. And so I think that's the gauntlet. That's a challenge for us, is to figure out one reason why we can embrace these issues, because they're not going to go away. We're not going to be able to shove them out by the Great Salt Lake. We're not going to be able to put them by the railroad tracks. They're going to have to be in the communities.
Well
With that,
said.
I'm out.
Thank you, Commissioner. It is well said, and I did read that article as well, and it's worth reading, just for anyone's information. And I wholly concur with what Commissioner Andreotti said about, you know, it does include all of us. In my situation specifically, I'd like my kids to be, because now I can stand them. They're old enough that I want them around, and they can't afford to be around. So it's yeah, it's kind of a thing where we do need to consider, you know, the affordability of housing. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's all for low or moderate income. That just means it needs to be affordable for pretty much everybody. So anyway, thank you. Anything else, commissioners?
Just quickly, I agree with Commissioner Andreotti here. I think it's very important that we figure out our affordability issues. I think moving forward, it would be nice to have a new general plan that sets that expectation. I hesitate to make our last meeting, we had one that wanted to rezone, and it's hard for me to allow that, knowing that other people weren't given that same opportunity. And I like that going forward, we'll have that expectation set up so it's not preferential. But something I really would like to see, I don't think making a lot size smaller is going to make houses less expensive. Houses sell at market value. And we have to find other ways to make it so that we are developing homes for Utahns, not for California. Those homes are selling. And you can do a $500,000 $1 million home on a 1/4 acre lot. And we need to find what kind of developers will build homes that are affordable to Utahns, not to those with more money coming into the state. So that's my concern. That's just the concern.
You know, I really think that the master plan development is a key to do some of this stuff. Because, you know, you're right, a small lot, well, a 1/4 acre is gonna be a lot cheaper than a half, but what's wrong with a 1,200 square foot house? I've never figured that out. 800, 900 square foot houses is what made America great.
Yeah, there were 6 people,
Yeah, right.
maybe 10.
And they actually had to eat at the breakfast nook. And so I guess that, you know, and I know people, and there's a lot of pressure and it's market driven. I get all that. But if we do it right in a master plan development, I think there's going to be something for everybody. And I think that's a challenge that we have here. And I would like to see the homes, the real estate go down, but I don't believe it's gonna happen. I mean, it might go a little bit, but you know, it shouldn't take the onus off of us as planners.
No.
We just can't gamble that.
But I think we gotta make it more across the scale. I'm with you, all clustered together on a busy intersection is just a future accident. And if you put them in each community, those communities will police themselves. And you'll have families that live in that community right there that can go from the small to the big, and then maybe from the big to the small back. So I don't think we ought to limit it to a corridor.
I don't think, you know, if people had time, I could tell a story that happened to me in France. I almost started World War III over this same discussion about the Arab migrants. And with one of the Department of the Interior and the French government, and those Frenchmen can get pretty mad. But you know what? This country boy didn't back down either. But it's just how we want to do things. We want to compartmentalize people. We put them all over here. Fact of the matter is their behavior, their country comes with them. It's the same. And so I feel pretty strongly about it, and thank heaven I didn't start a war. The guy was a pretty big guy. I think I was in trouble. Like it's, you know, I guess it's dear to my heart. We were a poor family. And you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything because I was able to live in the community at the time, have a spread of people. And those people are the ones that help you develop on who you become later in life. If I was shoved away on 28th Street and Wall, who would have known? Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to captivate it. So, Charlie, you got your marching orders, at least for me. Anyway, and I appreciate what you do. So, done with that. Let's move on. I need a break.
Anything else, commissioners? And then we'll take a break. Okay. All right. We'll come back after our station break and hear from Director Grover.
Okay. Yeah.
I hope so. Well, and I know Commissioner Jenkins didn't want it. So nobody said anything at that last work session I had. I wish I'd have said what I said tonight. Because if it's like that JC property, that's a community. If we put everything over on 12, busy intersection, looking at a future,
I think that's good.
whatever, I don't want to say it out loud.
At least,
But
I
it's
mean,
better if you just, then they're part of the community.
you guys have a 1 hour training. And if I'm talkative you are, it might be more of a.
For density, we can do this, and we could work that into feasibility, because that's gonna be part of the future for everybody. Feds are gonna require it anyway. Oh. As long as you're for it. Well, I think we should have that conversation with Jenkins, so he doesn't have to. Well, no, you come, if he, once he commits, he's not gonna undo himself. Maybe that ought to be done in private. This is our liaison. You know? Well, I think that JC, you weren't in on that Jay Christensen deal. That's a good community. And it's not overcrowded for the amount of property. It's really not. But what we're talking about is giving more density, smaller lots for certain benefits. Because if you shove them all into one corner, it's just going to be. And they're people too. I'm done with acre lots. Those acre lots just turn out to be a trash bin after the first year. I'm saying this. Are you gonna have any visuals that we need to see? Night. Yeah, we caught you, Steve. We caught you. Why would the owner agree to take that anyway? I know, but why would he agree to take it? Wouldn't he want some help someday? He wants to pass.
And so then
Somebody else has to put their horse over there also.
so I mean, I don't know.
But now's the time.
I don't think so. Yeah. Big frontages. I don't either. Well, if we ought to pass that, it's not. But you aren't gonna require him though to do that. Yeah. The 5100. Bro, to extend. I think we ought to pass it and then put an easement on there, just in case someday they want to extend that, but at the cost of whoever wants to extend it. Like if. Yeah. On the other side of the deal. Even though. But he gives 30. I can go for that. I don't think we ought to hang him up anymore. So as soon as that gets done, and even if it's not there, we ought to pass it and say, we think this is, do we have the ability to spot zone, or is that the other guys stuff? That's the way we ought to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have another committee. Yes. So maybe that's where you ought to go. Let's see. Oh. So if we can color that purple or whatever, what color we need to put in there. Yeah. And they put the right color on there. We're good. Easier.
Readjourn. Yeah. Okay.
We'll re-adjourn back to our meeting from our break, and Director Grover has no comments for the record. So, Liam, do you have any comments for us before the training?
More comments than you will
All right.
ever. Hang on, I thought Charlie was doing stuff.
Oh, that's fine. We're not used to these meetings getting done before 9:10 anyway, so.
You know, those new rules of order you just adopted do specify that the meeting is to end at 8:30.
30, yes, yes. We like the overtime though. It's time and a half. And anything over 40 is double time, right? Yes. Right, so I think that legal counsel.
Here's Liam.
He's been wanting to do that for a long time.
Amen.
June has already set the expectation too high because every day I saw her last week when she knew I was doing the training, she always told me in the parking lot or anywhere, I'm just looking forward to your training. It's gonna be so good.
Me too.
Oh, June, I lost my connection to the Zoom meeting. I think I have to now ask to be back in. It kicked me all the way out. Let me see. Okay. Should be there, hopefully. Oh, yeah.
Public clamor. Love it.
No peeking. There we go. So good news and bad news. What time is it actually? Stop here. Okay. Good news and bad news is the good news is this was going to be your Open Public Meeting Act training. And public clamor is probably a little teeny bit more interesting than Open Public Meeting Act training. That's the good news. The bad news is that you are still going to get the Open and Public Meeting Act training, just at another time. And you have Director Grover and Mr. Favero to blame for that. It was their idea that we do a public clamor training.
Yes. With the hearings that are coming up, I thought it was a good idea. Maybe it was.
It is a good idea. It is a good idea. So public clamor, have all of you, we're missing two today, I know, but has everybody attended a training at some point in time about public clamor? Or at least when it was referenced or mentioned, or you have any idea? I know you're new, Cami, so. Okay, so probably at some point in time for the rest of you then, you've had some sort of training somewhere about public clamor. So the case law about public clamor is basically all the same. So you'll hear some of the same case law examples and references because it hasn't changed much with the exception of one case. There's a new 2020 case, kind of new, that isn't referenced in a lot of the materials and books on land use regulation and law. So there's one thing that might be new for some of you. So public clamor. So what is public clamor? I'm sorry, you guys have to wait here through this as well. Okay, now you're going to know. And you'll wish that you were still wondering what public clamor was.
You've seen it, you just don't know what it is.
Yeah. So that's a good point, Jed. What is public clamor? Do you know it when you see it? That's the question. There's an angry mob who comes to your meeting here at the Planning Commission shouting and saying, we don't like it, we don't like it. Does that constitute public clamor? many situations, yeah, that might meet the definition of public clamor. How about this nice lady? She's coming up to the microphone, speaking in a public meeting. You know, she looks nice and composed, and she's given her, she's saying her little part there. Can her comments constitute public clamor? Absolutely, right? So public clamor can come from the crowd. It can come from a riotous mob. It can come from a group of people who are upset. It can come from one individual up here at the podium who just speaks their opinion, and we're going to find out exactly what public clamor and how that works. Okay, so either scenario. So Utah public clamor doctrine, and the public clamor term is something that's been used by the courts since like the 70s. It's been around. The term's been around for a long time. And so they actually have the public clamor, what constitutes public clamor. And as it says here, it's simply citizen opinion and usually opposition, but whatever, opinion, regardless of facts or technical compliance on an application or decision by the reviewing body acting in an administrative or quasi-judicial capacity, right? So citizen opinion, it usually involves protests, concerns of interested and often neighboring property owners. Of note, here the very last one says the public clamor doctrine states that while there is no impropriety in the solicitation or reliance on the advice of neighboring landowners, the consent of neighboring landowners may not be made a criterion for the issuance or denial of a conditional use permit. But that's important because it clarifies that public comment and public opinion isn't absolutely bad, right? It's not a bad thing to have somebody come up here and give their opinion, but it just can't be relied on solely as the reason for your decision. So when somebody comes up and gives their opinion, no factual basis for it, they just don't like it. I hate this, I hate this, I hate the development, no, no, no. That constitutes public clamor in its most basic form. Good so far? Yes, very good. So public clamor plays into administrative items and legislative items in two different ways. And this is why we have, I know we've talked about administrative items and legislative items before, but this is important to review, right? So reviewing body presented with an application and an administrative matter, you have to rely on facts and not emotion or local opinion in making your decision. There's got to be a reasonable basis on the record why you support the decision or why you don't support the application, whatever it is. So you can take into consideration public input because public comments are allowed, it's due process, that's okay. However, the issue becomes for each one of you when you base your decision solely on public clamor, on somebody's opinion, right? Especially when it's an administrative item. So yeah. Public input. Oh yeah, so this is the unique thing, and this is where we got to be careful. Public input on an administrative item from an expert in the field can be used in certain circumstances, can be used by the planning commission, by the hearing body as substantial evidence. The record, if this body were to ever consider a member of the public's opinion on a development, for example, or a conditional use permit, if they stated that on the record that they had expertise in the field, if they were a real estate agent talking about how the proposed development is going to affect, or the conditional use permit is going to affect property values in the neighborhood. And they were a real estate agent. They were actually had some expertise opinion on the matter. That could be used in certain circumstances as evidence on the record to help you support your decision. But I hesitate to say it because It has to be clear on the record that that individual has expertise in the subject matter that you're discussing. And it has to be clear on the record as well that that even still alone is not the only reason why you are making your decision. So there still has to be compliance with the ordinance, factual basis for your decision.
I mean, it has to stand up in court if we don't.
Yes, that's where I'm going. Yes, it has to be able to stand up. So say the public comes and here's some things that they could say about whatever's on the agenda, right? The application is or is not consistent with the code because, and they give their reason, right? Now, hopefully, if their reason is correct, that could be actual facts. That could be a good reason for you to consider what they have to say. We don't want Walmart. We hate Walmart. Why don't you listen to us? We have 100 signatures that say no Walmart, right? They come in here and they're clamoring is essentially what they're doing. That's it's public clamor. That is public clamor, and that is information you can't use to base your decision upon, right? They still have the right to come in during a public comment period or public hearing and say that, and that's fine. They stay within their time period and they can state it, but your decision can't be based on that. If they were to say this application is inconsistent with the general area recommendation of the general plan that says big box retail should be avoided due to its negative impacts on existing small retail and our pedestrian oriented business district. Okay, so they're giving, hopefully if they're right, and it's an actual factual basis for stating what they're stating. Okay, you could listen to that. Or the specific application is inconsistent with the applicable conditional use permit criteria because they give reasons why, right? So it kind of helps when they reference the code, when they reference why or why not it doesn't comply. It just helps you to understand whether it's actual public clamor or whether there's any factual basis to it. Questions? We good? You good over there?
Maybe 100.
It often is, because it's usually based on somebody's feelings and opinions, right? Yep, absolutely. And so it is few and far between that you get actual comment that you can consider. But nonetheless, we still let them have their opportunity and give their 2 cents, right? I like saying no. It's not about, no, we aren't going to listen to the public. We don't care what you have to say. No, no, no. That's not what it's about, because we do appreciate when members of the public come and when they do come up to the microphone and give their piece, right? That's why we have a public meeting, is so the public can be informed of what's going on. And that's why we have public hearings and public comment periods, because we like to hear from the public. Even if, 95% of it is public clamor, technically. It's not just about saying no. We'd like to have them here. And the thing we got to remember is that the citizens and neighbors and the applicant, oftentimes the landowner, they both have rights. And both of these parties, when they come up here at this podium and present their piece, they both have very important rights. They need to be heard. We got to consider both of them. Absolutely. I don't know that you guys actually take an oath, do you? I don't think that they're sworn in, but for the
That's what people think, actually.
the elected officials, yes, they do take an oath and they are sworn. Yeah. And county commissioners, right? Yep, absolutely, that is correct. And so due process rights play into this. And what I think is important about this is this has been explained months ago in a meeting here. There were some neighboring landowners. There was a proposed development, and some neighboring landowners came in for the public hearing, and they were really good people, and they actually presented their opinion very well, and it was very articulate. One of them had their thoughts written down, which is great. They presented a good message. It was all their opinions and what they thought. Technically public clamor, but it was well done. And Chair Favero took a moment actually to educate the public, and especially those who were giving their opinion, that we understand your dislike or disdain towards the development, but we have to remember that the developer and or the landowner has rights as well. And you took a minute and you just explained to them that we're not overlooking your rights as the public or your feelings or thoughts entirely, but there's always another side to the equation. And that was the fact that the landowner, the developer, does have some rights as well. And anyways, you did a good job with explaining it. I've heard it explained before, and it was very educational, I think informational to those who were here to just kind of get the other side of it. Especially for a developer, right? Right.
And it's all free.
So legislative items is where public clamor plays a different role. So public clamor doctrine has no application when a legislative body acts in a legislative capacity. That doesn't mean, I know they say that weird. I think this court case says that weird. It doesn't mean the public clamor doctrine, doesn't mean public clamor doesn't play in a legislative capacity. It means a public clamor doctrine, meaning opinions and thoughts, they can play in your legislative capacity, right? When you're doing your rezone and your general plan, right? You get all sorts of public comments and public's opinions. And this is where you are a lawmaking, well, a recommending body, basically, acting in your legislative capacity, representing the citizens, trying to do what's best for them, right? This isn't an administrative act. It isn't an administrative follow the rules. If the code says yes, then say yes. This is, you get some discretion. And so when the public comes up and they present public clamor, then you can listen to it and you can let it affect your decision. And it rarely will a legislative act ever get overturned by the courts, because it is really up to you and your discretion to do what you want with the legislative decision-making process.
I just want to make a comment. The legislative process is where the teeth are, and that's when no one shows up. That's our problem here. When the codes are actually changed or made, no one's here. You know, a lot of times there's even an article in the newspaper or something, but regardless of that, it is noticed to the public and no one shows up. So take responsibility. We deal with it as the commission. We change or create the new rule, so to speak. Well, then 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years down the road, we have a crowd of people in here that are, you know, like your first slide, pitchforks and fire, want to crucify the body that's, you know, that's here listening to them. I can't stress enough. I guess that's my whole point. Wish there was more people here. The legislative part of the process is where the teeth are in this thing. After that's done and after it's passed, there's really nothing else, at least that our commission can do, other than listen to the complaint, but at the same time know what the code is, and then proceed forward, which is usually going to go in the direction that the code intended it to go, no matter how many people are here, no matter how many people are upset. Thank you.
Yep, I agree. That's the unfortunate reality.
Please. It's the same up here, exactly the same. It ain't water in that cup. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you
I'm
for
just
that.
kidding. Yes, and thank you very much. And we're, glad to hear. I wish every chair was filled with someone saying the same thing you're saying. But I think a lot of people just choose to ignore it too. I really think that's the biggest part of it, is they just choose to ignore it. Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate those comments. Thank you. Okay. Mr.
Okay,
Mann?
so per the code, we talked about legislative decisions rarely being overturned. Per the code, this is why. All it has to be a legislative decision, it's going to be upheld if it is reasonably debatable that they advance the purposes of the land use regulation in the land use code, and they do not otherwise violate federal, state, or local statutes, laws, or ordinances. So reasonably debatable is the standard. That's really low standard. So that means when you act on a legislative decision, it's hard to say don't act with any concern about your decision being overturned at a later date. Anything could happen, but it is really just so much in your discretion to do what you want to do on a legislative matter. Administrative decisions, though, these are the ones that make up court cases, right? This is what happens with administrative decisions sometimes. They'll be upheld only if they are supported by substantial evidence in the record of the decision, and they do not violate federal, state, or local statutes, laws, or ordinances. So substantial evidence for administrative decisions.
That's why the director comes.
And Rick is good at making sure that things are on the record. Substantial evidence, and this is per the code too, this is just a ridiculous definition, right? Is beyond a scintilla, and a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion, right? Scintilla. I think it's like tortilla, scintilla, same thing. Right. It means like a scanty little bit. Yes. So you have to have substantial evidence on the record for administrative decision-making. Question, does public clamor constitute substantial evidence in an administrative capacity?
It depends on whether you live next door to them. I'm just.
What he's meaning is no, public clamor doesn't count. Okay, so that gets us, we're almost half an hour through. We got a few minutes. I'll give you handouts for these first two court cases. The Davis County and Clearfield City one is like the standard go-to public clamor case in Utah. It's been around forever. It's very good. We can talk about it if we have a few minutes if you want to. The Harmon City one in Draper was interesting as well. It's just Harmon trying to build a grocery store, and it's the city telling them no, and it's all the public who shows up and clamors. But that involved a rezone. And so what the city was really doing was deciding first whether they were going to rezone that parcel Harmon's wanted to be on. Everybody shows up and they say, no, this is our backyard, right? This is our backyard. We don't want a Harmon's, a grocery store, sitting right there in our backyard. And they clamored and they clamored and they clamored. And Draper City, the planning commission, they listened to the clamor and they did not rezone the parcel. And Harmon said, whoa, We've got all our administrative ducks in a row. Check, check, check. We've been through the planning commission. We've got this done. If you don't approve our rezone, we're going to appeal. And Harmon did. They went and appealed, and they appealed all of their local appeals at the local level, and finally ended up going to the district court. And Harmon says, hey, we did everything right. And then when it came time for Draper City to consider this, everybody stood up. It was public clamor. Case law says public clamor, public clamor. No, 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 you can't listen to that. So we want their decision overturned. And the court just said, they referred back to the first case, the Davis County case, and they say, wait. This is a legislative item, legislative discretion. If they want to deny a rezone because of public clamor, because they listen to the residents that they serve, then that is in their capacity to do that. And so they upheld Draper City's decision. So Harmon went back later after the fact, and there is a Harmon's now on that parcel. And how do you think they got there? Maybe that was part of it. But Harmon's also went to every single house in the neighborhood, all the neighbors, and said, hey, what would it take for you to say okay to our development? And what it really came down to was a lot of architecture. What they wanted, they didn't want, in their backyards, they want a big old wall. If you're gonna put a wall, Harmon's there, don't let us see the trucks coming in and out. Don't let us see that stuff. There's things that Harmon's hadn't considered before. And so Harmon's went back to the city. They had a new plan, a new layout. The public clamor was significantly reduced. There was always those who were going to say no. They were opposed to it, but it was so drastically reduced that the city then approved it, and Harmon's got in. And there it is on that same parcel today. Thanks. So this case is the new one. This is the Staker the town of Springdale. And unlike the last case we just talked about, Harmon's, this one's an administrative item, and it's conditional use is what the applicant was after. And so Staker Parsons had a piece of land by Zion's National Park, right? And they wanted to build a parking lot is what they wanted to do here. And that was allowed if as a conditional use for this area that as it was zoned. However, the neighbors complained and said, you know, this is going to create undue noise, pollution, traffic. It's just not good for the neighborhood. But this was an administrative item, right? So the city of Springdale, their planning commission and their city council denied the conditional use. They said, no, okay, it's not actually a good location for this. And so Staker says, whoa, administrative item. So we're going to appeal this. And they appealed. Because as we know, and we've had a training about conditional use permits as well, right? The court does reference conditional use permits. They have to be approved unless the applicant can't really mitigate any of the detrimental effects. And then the court says the land use decision is arbitrary and capricious if it's not supported by substantial evidence on the record, or it's illegal if it's based on an incorrect interpretation of the law. So the court went back and looked at how the planning commission and the city council looked at this conditional use application. And they found there was substantial evidence on the record to support the public clamor that the detrimental effects of whatever was noise, pollution, and undue traffic could not be mitigated by this parking lot. In other words, they went back and said, okay, if the planning commission relied solely on public clamor because everybody was so upset, if that's what changed their decision, then yeah, Staker probably has a really good appeal going here. But as they looked at the record, it wasn't just public clamor. And they do say public clamor cannot constitute the sole basis of a land use decision. The town's solicitation and consideration of information from the public wasn't improper because it didn't make the consent of neighboring landowners a criteria for approval. Rather, it was information from the public that was taken together with the information from the application and planning staff findings constitutes substantial evidence. So they met that substantial evidence standard in support of the town's conclusion. And so too bad, Staker. Yeah, it's an administrative item. And you're right. Usually those are upheld. And usually we wouldn't be in this situation with an administrative item, especially a conditional use application. But here, there's enough evidence on the record to indicate that you could not mitigate the negative impacts of your planned parking lot. So the court upheld it. So this was just kind of a different, unique one. It's newer, and it wasn't. Anyways, it's different from the legislative, the zoning one. So that wraps it up. I'm going to hand a couple of more. The Harmon one I'll give you, as well as the Davis County one, and they're just synopsises of it, real brief, but they're actually really useful. And you need 30 more minutes of training anyways. So, any questions? Yes, very good. Thank you.
30 minutes of reading.
Yes. Individual reading at home. All right. Question? Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you stayed. Right.
Good, Liam.
Training, I think has almost concluded upon our acceptance of the documents that Liam is handing out. Thanks, Liam. And that everybody needs to know that it's okay to sort through what doesn't sound right as we're hearing it. Just because it might not be the popular thing to do. On that note, I guess we'll conclude over to our workshop in the room next door. Can we do that without without adjourning at this point? Or do we need to adjourn the meeting and take up the work session? Okay. Okay. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn from the regular meeting and begin the work session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I feel-
Absolutely.
Right.